Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello and welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. This is Gary Wilson, your host. We're glad to have you back. Hey, if you haven't done so, if you could, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite channels, 30 different channels, including Stitcher, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And while you're out there, please go check out globalinvestoragent.com. This is the website where we specifically showcase all the investor agents in the country, 27 states right now and growing. It's the fastest growing team out there. They're all trained. They're not traditional agents. They're trained to identify, analyze, and negotiate really good deals on and off market deals. Okay, this is a big deal for us investors. They're certified. We train them ourselves. And it doesn't cost you a dime. So go check them out and grab your cell phone. And if you are an agent, you should definitely check it out and check out our numbers and things like that, because we're basically making some big waves in the industry because of the way we do things. So have fun at it. And meantime, let's go ahead and introduce our guest today, Dorian Lam. Hey, Dorian, thanks so much for doing this. I know you're a busy guy with what you're doing and where you're doing it, and we appreciate you having you on.
Thank you, Gary, for having me. I look forward to being part of Massive Passive.
You got it, man. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sort of familiar with your background because you and I have spoken. But for everybody else, tell a little bit about where you are and how you got there. And I think some people will see some similarities between the two of us. So yeah. Yeah.
I'll start off by saying where I am now. I'm an owner and principal at Cornerstone Land Abstract, a New York-based title company. We do about 150 closings a month. About $1 billion in transactional business a year between commercial and residential. And it covers everything from your personal purchase of single family homes or apartments and condos here in Manhattan and in the city, or the purchase of commercial assets from a retail outlet to a large office building. So we really cover it from soup to nuts. The team's about 23 individuals, and the key to how we have built the staff is by having many attorneys. As you know, attorneys really help navigate through and fight past the closing when there's issues. So we have 5 attorneys in-house, which is a very good scenario to be in, and especially when we are really big on problem solving. As far as how I got here, I'll keep it very quick. Born and raised New Yorker, admittedly a biased New Yorker. So Gary, you and I are going to have a separate conversation about why you don't invest in New York or New Jersey, but that's for another day. And I went to business school here. I studied management information systems and management, became a consultant coming out of college. I was on at PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 4 at the time. And this is going to date myself here, but they were purchased, or the management consulting arm was purchased by IBM. And I had a short stint with IBM as well. My foray into the real estate world came about through acquisition. One of the projects that I was on was acquired, or the company was acquired by First American Title. So that's my segue into title. And I was back office, project manager, senior operations manager for just over a decade. And I had an opportunity to join a firm that the president of the unit that I was in had formed. And it was off the preface of helping him set up the back office and then learning the business development life cycle as well. So he took me under his wings and gave me an idea of how the front office worked and how business development worked in our space. And it was a really unique experience. And I'll table that for later. But what ended up happening was he sold the company to AmTrust. So it was the second time I was part of an acquisition, sale of a title company to a publicly traded company. And I had an opportunity. I was sought out by the Cornerstone guys, and they asked me to join. And I joined them in 2018. So our anniversary just passed.
Nice. Well, first, I've got a question, if you don't mind. Where'd you go to school when you were studying management information systems?
Yeah, I went to NYU Business, so Stern School of Business.
Nice.
In Manhattan.
Yeah. Awesome. So you definitely you got New York running through your blood,
Yeah. Like I said, born and raised and admittedly biased.
Nice. Yeah. I used to sell for First American. That was the first company I sold title for when I had my title company, and good guys, and also Stewart Title. I forget some of the others along the way, and they got me into other things like working. We had a brokerage too, so we would get their assets through their asset management division. All the bank assets, all those REOs, and that led to another. It's just crazy how here's another way to pick up on here. So listen to what Dorian's telling you. See, when you open up one door, all of a sudden 10 other doors open up for you, right? Even if a door closes, there's another door that's going to open up. So I just learned that never get frustrated or let anger set in or any kind of just go and look for the opportunity. And so Dorian, let's pick up right there. And so you've obviously managed to take advantage of the events that occurred in your business life, and here you are right now, and you're with a great company doing $1 billion a year. That's a big deal. Even if you're in New York, that's a big deal. So talk a little bit about what it is you're doing professionally, but also personally. So professionally, understand you're definitely working with the Cornerstone Title, and I'm sure you got a lot of awesome stories there, because I know in title you get everything, man. You hear all. So,
yeah, we do.
You have to look under all the rocks, because you're going to issue title insurance. So you get all the great stories, but even yourself, you're participating in the marketplace personally, and I want people to kind of hear the story and be able to make the connection for themselves between business and assets, and how the two can kind of play together.
Yeah, and Gary, you bring up a really good point as far as, in what you are doing, there's always an opportunity for other doors to open. And, in my journey, to pick up from where I left off, is that I had an opportunity to learn the business development lifecycle. And as you know, being with shops like First American and Stewart, it can be, let's just call it the Wild West at times. And not only is it to keep an open view of what's out there, but it's also to stay true to yourself. And here's a really classic example of that, and how it allowed me to get into real estate and investing from an investor standpoint. When I first started business or BD in title insurance, many of the people that I was around had either very long ingrained careers or an angle, whether they knew a developer at a personal level or they were related to a very wealthy family. For me, starting with having to build a book of business from scratch, it really became first about what was I even building the business around. You really got to know your industry. And I took the time to actually learn real estate. And, that sounds like the obvious thing to do, but believe it or not, there are quite a number of people and professionals, not just in title, but I'm sure in other arenas as well, where they may not know the product or industry to the level that they should if they're going to really represent it. So I took some time to learn the real estate life cycle, the participants, who I was talking to, because in my case, I needed to know who was able to even direct title. So what my journey became at that point was really going back to my old self. And this is what I meant by that comment, which is I was a consultant by training. So now what my job became was to learn what people did, why they did it, and then asked what could be done better, or what were their major pain points. And now I was taking a consultative approach to it. And while networking, it also meant that I was meeting other individuals in the real estate ecosystem, and whether it be a lender, a loan originator, an architect, an appraisal company, you name it, right? There's a lot of services that are around real estate that not everyone knows everyone, and that you can have a role with connecting people. So it went from networking to connecting, and in connecting the right people, taking the time to really understand how to solve people's problems, and then connecting them to people who could potentially solve it, you're in essence adding value, and you're also learning at the same time. So you're seeing how the problems are either being solved, or at least the methods by which there's an attempt to solve the problem. And in learning that, you start putting the pieces together, and you start meeting more people, from developers to owner operators themselves. And really, when they see that you're really trying to help them solve problems, it opens other doors to pick up on what you had mentioned. And now the conversations begin along the lines of, would you be interested in investing in my deals? Or it would be from me to them saying, can you teach me how you got into this and how I should look at investing into deals? So it really is a situation in which you can always learn from your job and find ways, or at least identify other doors that you may not know about going into it, but that appear and that you can, open.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Sometimes opportunities are right in front of us, and we don't even see it because we're so focused on, focus is a good thing, but we get so focused that we're not aware of the other related opportunities. And I'll give you an example of where I learned to really to look for and recognize related opportunities or synergies. And it came from banking. I was in banking for 18 years. And back in the 80s, banks were deregulated during the Reagan administration, and competition set in for the first time in the banking industry. I mean, like real competition. So banks had this term called larger share of wallet. So granted, you could go open up a checking account and back then get a free toaster, or you could, open up a CD or an IRA, or, get a home equity line of credit on your home, things like that. And that was basically it. The way they made money was on the interest spread. But when competition set in, everybody, now you no longer could just be a commodity, that they compete, and they competed on fees. So banks decided we're going to offer more services to our clients, as many services we can offer, so that we can serve them, and of course, earn revenue from those profit streams. So in real estate, you've got brokerage, which is the sales. You've got title, which was what you're doing, and I did title too. Property management, appraisal, and lending, or and insurance, property insurance. Those are the 5 or 6 key industries supporting real estate. There's others, but those are the key business ones. So I'm not suggesting everybody listening go out and launch these 6 businesses. What I'm suggesting is you apply the logic to your own life. So if you're a dentist and you're tired of paying rent, you want to buy an office, don't just buy an office. Look for strategically for a corner location or somewhere in a strip mall or close by where you can purchase maybe a 4-unit office building, and you're the orthodontist, but you also have a family practitioner in there, or a pediatric dentist, something related, right? Maybe a pharmacy. What you're doing is, if you're going to invest in the real estate, invest in a way that just doesn't allow you to appreciate, gain from the appreciation, the increased value of the property, but passive income through rentals. So have you seen that kind of activity with your clients? So let's talk about maybe one of your examples. And if you got a crazy one, I love title stories because you get all the wacky stuff,
Yeah.
Anything you can think of that you're obviously allowed to share or can share without divulging names and things like that, but kind of walk people through that process and what really happens behind the scenes. It seems simple, but there's a lot to it,
Yeah. I'll start high level first, and then maybe we can dig down into some more specific examples. But look, I'll start with that. Participating in real estate, even from the title perspective, gives us a unique angle with regards and lens with regards to see the transaction. Number one, we're at the closing table because, as you know, the settlement portion of our business is one that is coordinating the closing and making sure all documents are in place and are in recordable fashion. And what that tells us is, number one, we know who's really closing deals. So that means a lot in the commercial space, especially for lenders and owner-operators and developers, where we're relied upon to, or not relied upon, but we're a source to verify or see if there's validity in what someone is saying with regards to what they're doing. Where we can say, yeah, they have closed these 5 deals. But what I mean to take away from that is, being from the title insurance perspective, we have to solve a lot of problems that come up, whether it's liens, encumbrances, easements, or any sort of item that could affect title. And in solving the problems that we have to go through very frequently, we get to actually learn how to help developers think or talk through it. And it's to the extent that one of my founders in this company actually broke off and became a developer. So from the experience itself of just solving developer type problems, right? I'm focusing on commercial now, but it also relates in the residential space. But taking the experience that we've gone through, it allowed one of our founders to become a developer. Now they're in their third major building of 50 plus units, of commercial development. Another more specific example, and now I'll lend to the residential spaces. The first deal that I invested in came about because during a contract flip, there was a scenario that came up that did not allow the purchase or the transaction to go through. And a lot of it had to do with the murkiness or the clarity with regards to some of the title elements that had come with it. Things like, open water bills or any of the other mortgage chains or open mortgages that they weren't aware of. They walked at the last minute, and we and my business partner saw an opportunity and said, "Hey, you know what? We could actually, take this over and just close it right now." So here's a scenario of just being in the trenches, right? That we can see deals fall apart, and in this case, we participated. But in the other cases, we can take it to other people naturally, depending on the size and type of deal. Yeah. So those are two examples. Now, yes, as you had mentioned, title can get a little crazy. And here's one of my more, here's one of the stories that does resonate from the perspective of how something so obvious in general can be a surprise at the end. And the scenario is a commercial property here in New York City that was in essence in contract for pretty much $10 million, right under it. And we, while running our searches and generating a title commitment, revealed a $1 million water bill. And, that's obviously of significance. It's more than 10% of the deal itself. So what was really shocking to us is at the 11th hour that the buyer is figuring this out, or at least being told. And that, from the title perspective, was very surprising because we didn't have purpose to be or put our shoes in the other feet. And for me, in doing that practice, it was, how am I finding this out now? None of my advisors or consultants have told me this. Why is the title company telling me now, after I've lined up financing and after I've done my due diligence? So, the downside to this is that oftentimes we're the bearer of bad news, so they blame the title company just, as a reaction. Yeah. But in this scenario, look, even if they were able to get around the financial impact of it, because no attorney is going to let a new buyer take on $1 million water bill, it really opened the eyes as far as, why do you have $1 million water bill and what am I getting myself into? So it ended up being a scenario in which, there was a leak, a very big one, that the seller did not know about. And then someone was tapped into their line illegally. So these are the type of things that, and it's something we could talk about with regards to the impetus of the Cornerstone Report. But frankly, my business partners and I were just very surprised that there were certain items that weren't being discovered until very late in the process, where these things were easily discoverable right at the onset.
Yeah, we had one. This was crazy. We were buying a building, and it was an older municipality. So the housing inspector, whatever the municipal employee was, came by to who represented the water authority to read the meter. And this property had multiple units that the pipes were just so commingled and tied together, it's ridiculous to know what was going where.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they actually had a pipe that was going between 2 meters, and yet the meters from there were feeding 2 different properties, but 2 lines coming in. It just had this. So in any case, the inspector made the comment, you may need to replace one of these meters, but he used the word may, right? So it didn't trigger initially a title issue or something to resolve prior to closing. Well, after closing 30 days, we get notified by the water authority, hey, now it's time to go replace the meter. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, we put in there, you have to replace it. We said, no, you didn't. You said you may have to.
Right.
That's something different. So went to the title company, and they were able to resolve it. We actually had a free water meter out of it. So, but another one, this is going to sound crazy. Literally in the very next municipality, the municipal offices were moving, and they were moving old file cabinets. This was like they had gone electronic in the 90s. They found a folder with some water bills that were unpaid for a property I purchased 6 months before, and I got notified saying, "Hey, you owe us several $1,000s." And I said, "I'm sorry, but we went through the closing. We asked you to provide the finals, what was due,
Right, the final reading,
and we paid them, and now you're coming back with something from 30 years ago." I said, "This you totally you prevented me from being able to do my proper due diligence." And they said, "Sorry, this is how it's a lienable item." So I went to the title company. The title company said, "Well, it has to be discoverable in order to be covered." And of course, it wasn't discoverable because it was behind a filing cabinet. Well, they ended up working out. I just was persistent and finally got that result. But these are the kind of things that happen, guys. So I've had investors tell me, "Well, I'll buy the entity. A property could be owned in LLC, and therefore we don't need new title insurance." And I'm thinking,
oh, yeah, very dangerous.
Yeah, you need it. I wouldn't buy an outhouse without title insurance. I mean, I wouldn't buy an outhouse anyways, but you know what I'm saying? I would,
yes.
I never buy anything without getting title insurance, you know? So crazy stuff. Yeah. So listen, if you wouldn't mind sharing another example of your own investing. I know you mentioned, I think you just recently picked up one, but how is that something you're doing? Is it more strategic where you're taking advantage of opportunities to come your way through the title business, or you're being more aggressive, like being more intentional on the side on your own to your own investing? Kind of where are you in that path to we call it the path of profit? Because I know a lot of people start off sort of passively. You take, if something comes its way and it looks great, you take advantage of it, and eventually get into, hell, this is really working. I'm gonna have a program to where I'm gonna go out and identify a property. So kind of where are you in that pathway, and maybe give us an example there too, if you don't mind. Hi, Gary here. Just want to say thanks real quick for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate you doing that. And all I want to do is take a quick minute to introduce you to the Healing House Foundation. Okay, so if you're watching this on video, I'm going to let you see it. If you're on podcast, you're not going to be able to see it, but you can see it in the click on the show notes on globalinvestoragent.com, and you can see, well, that's the main website, globalinvestoragent.com. And so it's a great place for you to connect, not just with me, but with all the agents we have around the country, and check it out. But more importantly, if you click on the Healing House Foundation, okay, you can read all about it. And this is a 501(c), totally voluntary. Nobody here makes a dime. So all the proceeds, 100%, go to local needs in your area where you live, for people that need help, all walks of life. I mean, every one of us knows somebody that needs help. And this is our way to come back full circle in the world of real estate, where we make so much money. Let's help those who are in need. Sometimes they need a helping hand. Sometimes they need to be taught how to fish, and sometimes they just need to fish. Sometimes they need both. So this is a way for you to participate. Check it out. All kinds of stories, examples. It's very flexible in that we can earmark funds for a particular need that you have in your area, as long as it's related to the need of housing. That's all. It doesn't matter what the underlying circumstances are. We pray for healing for everybody. So in any case, thanks for indulging me. Let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. As far as the evolution of where I am now, it's, a lot of the deals had come about just from being in the title trenches, right? Or closing trenches. So our original thesis, and it's a partnership with friends and family. There's, let's just say, about 20 of us that we share deals and we, in essence, raise money from that perspective. So a real retail friends and family approach. And, for the first few deals just came about from stuff that we saw, or from people who we impressed upon from our service side, of the title side, that came to us. So the original thesis was, so long as we made money on it, right? It was very simple. It's just, all right, if you put in $1 and you get back $2, then it makes sense. But we are now becoming more strategic with regards to how to go about it. And that's where I am in the journey of it. So, listening to guys like yourself and the podcast that you put together, it's extremely helpful. And really to even hear it from, outside of my myopic kind of view of New York, but seeing how you put it together. But as far as where we are, yes, we've gotten much more strategic about it. As I mentioned, one of our founders broke off and started to do development himself. So we naturally get the first look at those type of deals. And it's allowing us to become more educated with regards to how to find deals, how to look at deals, how to underwrite deals, how to finance deals, how to really complete the entire cycle of what you need, how to really properly vet your agents, and all the things that you need to consider in pre-development. So as far as what's come about from a specific deal that we've worked on, not so much that a big commercial deal that fits into our strategy and how we look at it now came about, but just from going through the experiences with other developers. So for example, another example or another case in which we saw somewhat or scratched our head a little was in the case of a multifamily development that was over 150 units. And this thing was completely teed up to close. And again, we run our title reports, again, we're the bearer of bad news, and everybody looks at us as if we're trying to kill deals. But out comes a covenant restriction for that piece of property that says, and this is from a deed that's handwritten from 1890, that says that you cannot build anything here that is not a religious facility or a community facility. So that threw a wrench into everything, because now it meant somebody had to take on risks that they were not expected to. The thought process was the lender would take the risk, the lender will never take the risk. The thought process then was the title company would take the risk, and most title companies will not take that risk. So it became a discussion of how to risk mitigate and how to spread it to the point that a developer would move forward with this property, because you're faced with a situation where at any given time somebody can appear from nowhere and say they represent a religious corporation and knock on your door and say you got to stop building this, which can obviously create a really bad scenario. So it's that practice, right? So looking at easements, looking at other restrictions, and seeing where we can navigate through it, that has allowed us to find things that others wouldn't have. But it also, word has gone out, and developers have come to us now and said, could you help me do an assessment of covenants and restrictions? And again, hence the birth of the Cornerstone Report, which is, and it's worth, if you would allow me to I guess, plug that in.
Sure.
The Cornerstone Report is what we're calling a pre-title report that, highlights the things that people should care about. It's not a deep dive title report. It's meant to be what we call the initial pass of due diligence on whatever property you're looking at. And it'll identify the key elements such as water bills and other types of bills, mechanics, liens, judgments, covenants and restrictions, rights of way, shared driveways, all that stuff that you really should know up front, and that we see people are finding out very late in the game. So the Cornerstone Report is something we're offering now through some data aggregation that we've done. Using my previous tech kind of hat background, and it's something we're offering in New York City, in the 5 boroughs in New York City, and it's been a helpful tool for owners and developers.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And everybody listening, if you haven't been to New York in a while, I highly recommend you go now. I mean, when I was a kid, the Bronx was a place where you saw on the news once a week because somebody burned a house down to collect insurance. So
yeah,
it's nothing like that now. Bronx has come a long ways. Beautiful. Same with Queens. Same with Brooklyn. In Manhattan. I mean, Manhattan's always been great, of course, but and I've heard people say, well, how can you afford anything in Manhattan? I was like, well, how could you not to? Look at the appreciation over the years.
Right.
Everything is relative. Rents are relative. Values are relative. Personally, I'd rather, make millions than hundreds, and you have to be in a place like New York to do it. So it's a wonderful place to be. I don't live there, but I've got family up there. I'm up there quite a bit, typically, a month out of every year at a minimum. And, people love to be there. It's addicting. Once you're there, you get addicted to it, So and you'll see some awesome neighborhoods, even if you go. Again, let's just take Brooklyn, for example. People here have heard of Brooklyn, but there's individual neighborhoods in Brooklyn. There's individual neighborhoods in Queens. There's a neighborhood of Harlem. I mean, and remember, it wasn't, maybe a generation ago, people were afraid of Harlem, and now it's it's attracting investors from all over. So if you're listening to this and you're in Washington State or Canada or any of the 50 countries where we're being downloaded, I will tell you, a lot of foreign investors love big cities, and in particular like New York City, because of the appreciation. The values are so great. And we got 3 agents there: Steve, Charlie, and Svetlana. We call her Lana. You've got Dorian there to do your title work. I mean, this is why we do these podcasts and build these networks, so we have the people we need there when we need them, and we know have our back, so to speak. So, anything? Yeah, I know we're getting close on time here, but anything else you can think of, Dorian? I know people are worried about timing right now. Like, boy, interest rates just shot up. We got big inflation numbers. There's the ordeal in Ukraine, and the market seems like it's kind of teetering. The stock market. All I know is real estate's always been a kind of an asset to buy whenever you can, because over time it always goes up. It always goes up.
Right.
Any thoughts on there as far as you've there, your whole life you've been there, so you've seen it all. But any thoughts on those lines?
Yeah, I mean, look, key points about New York, right? As far as one of the allures is the appreciation of the actual land itself through the years. If you look at any chart, it's always up. There may be a dip here and there, but if you look at the 20-year, 30 or 40-year, it's an up chart. Now, one of the allures also with New York is that it attracts the talent, and we will always get the Googles, the Facebooks, whichever company is ruling the world at that given time, having a presence here. It's the big metropolis. And I'm not saying that to pat the city on the back, but from a real estate perspective, which is where your question, lays, is that, look, I'll start with saying that, one of my mentors said, don't ever try to time the market. Your belief is in real estate. You're looking at a 40-year chart, it's going to go up. So you're in it for the long term. Obviously, there's short plays, but honestly, if you really want to be successful, longevity is one of the successive points of any business, but even more so in real estate. You don't know how many times I come across clients who are third generation real estate wealthy, and it all starts with, and this is a model that I've heard over and over again, which is we buy and we never sell. Yeah. You buy a piece of property in New York, and the idea is to get the rent from highly talented, for the most part, highly paid individuals. And then you get the appreciation that comes with it. There's a number of tax strategies I know you've covered on your previous episodes that you can employ that allow you to save on or get some tax sheltering. So overall in New York, the belief, and you can see it in some of the state of the markets already, where we've just come out of COVID, if you can even consider coming out of it, but we're as close to 2019 as we've been in 3 years. And the immediate reaction is that there's not enough supply in Manhattan or in the 5 boroughs here in New York City. So there's a race to build. There's a race to get in and get your stakes in the ground, to get some incentives given from the government or the local agencies. I could speak at length with it, but I'm obviously a firm believer in New York. Its fundamentals, and that it'll maintain its trajectory. So the answer to your question is, and for everyone listening, is that it may seem like a big bill to pay now, but in 10 years, for the most part, 100% of the time, I've seen people see appreciation that makes them happy to make the investment. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, in all my years, as a result of divorce years ago, was required to sell properties. And now in hindsight, back then it was, afterwards I was happy because it bought me my freedom eventually. But really now, looking back on everything, guys, there are very few properties I ever regretted buying. There were some that did better than others, right? But of all the ones I sold, looking back, I regret having sold every single one of them, because it keeps going up and up and up and up over time. And it's leverage, so easily to leverage real estate. I mean, let's say you keep it, you pay it off. It's like having your own bank.
Exactly.
You can get a business line of credit against the property to go buy another property. Then you get a first mortgage on that property and pay back your line of credit and keep recycling it over and over again. And do that. Then you do that with 2 properties, 3 properties, 4 properties. Then you got 10 properties you can do that for.
Right.
It's like having 10 banks. So
10 banks getting especially in the mortgage environment or interest rate environment that we just came out of, where
Yeah.
you're getting money in some cases below 3%. You obviously have arbitrage if you're investing into things that the bar is 3% and you have arbitrage, right? So,
yeah. I'll tell you what. How can people get a hold of you? If you wouldn't mind, maybe give them the website and anything that they can use. Because I know you guys do an awesome job up there. You obviously got a great reputation, and I think people are probably going to be interested in taking a look at the Big Apple as far as investing goes, especially since we got agents there and you. So how do folks reach you?
For sure. You can always find me at cornerstonelandabstract.com. I know you're going to post the email, but the email is Dorian, Dorian, at cltitle.com. I've also just started a website with my name on it, so you can find me at dorianlam.com. And there you'll be able to see information about myself, about the Cornerstone Report, and then also a white paper that I'm going to publish in hopefully a few weeks, which I'll share the link for you to share to your network.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate this, and I really appreciate your time, Dorian. I think I speak for a lot of people when we say thank you for doing this. I know you're a busy guy, and these podcasts are it's an interesting world. So for anyone listening, if you could please make sure you do leave a review for Dorian's podcast interview. That's what makes the world go around in the world of podcasters. You don't have to pay for anything. You get to listen for free, get lots of good information. And you leaving reviews is the currency of how this whole thing works. So, and Dorian's obviously shared a lot of good stuff with you today. And while you're out there, check out the website, right? Cornerstone. And also, so it's Dorian Lam, is that right? .com.
Dorian Lam, Lam. So Dorian Lam, Lam.com.
Thank you very much. Dorian Lam, Lam.com website. And take advantage of that too while you're out there. And grab yourself one of our investor agents. We have 3 in New York City, right? So you can go to globalinvestoragent.com and grab one of those guys there and have them do the legwork for you. And again, if you're an agent out there, you're looking for something new to do, something better than what you're already doing, go onto that website and you can get on there too and do an interview if you'd like and see if you're a good match for what we're doing. So, okay, everyone, appreciate your time and participation today. We look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. In the meantime, take care and God bless.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.